The Federal Reserve's decision to raise interest rates has far-reaching effects on the economy, and it impacts every American in some way. While many people associate interest rate hikes with mortgages, loans, and credit card payments, the ripple effect can extend to everyday expenses, like groceries and gas. As borrowing costs increase, so do the costs of goods and services, which can lead to higher prices for the things we buy most often. In this video, we'll explore the top 10 ways U.S. interest rate hikes affect the prices of groceries and gas. 1. Increased supply chain costs. Interest rate hikes make borrowing more expensive for businesses, including those in the supply chain for groceries and gas. Companies may face higher costs for transportation, storage, and inventory, which ultimately leads to increased prices on products. For example, when delivery trucks or freight services raise their prices due to higher interest rates, those costs are passed along to consumers, making both grocery and gas prices rise. 2. Higher fuel prices for transportation. Gasoline prices are heavily influenced by interest rates, especially in terms of transportation and logistics. With higher interest rates, trucking and shipping companies face steeper costs for financing vehicles, fuel, and equipment. These higher operational costs are often passed on to consumers in the form of increased prices for groceries and other goods. Therefore, when interest rates go up, expect a noticeable increase in the cost of filling up your gas tank as well as a surge in food prices. 3. Cost of borrowing for grocers and gas stations. Grocers and gas stations rely on loans to maintain operations, restock inventory, and expand their businesses. When the Fed raises interest rates, it becomes more expensive for these businesses to borrow money. To cope with these higher costs, many businesses raise their prices. For consumers, this results in higher grocery bills and higher prices at the gas pump, as these companies pass on the increased cost of borrowing to their customers. 4. Impact on commodity prices. Interest rate hikes can also influence the prices of commodities such as oil, corn, wheat, and other key agricultural products. Higher rates can lead to a stronger U.S. dollar, which affects global commodity prices. A stronger dollar can make it more expensive for other countries to import U.S. goods, driving up costs for U.S. companies that rely on imported materials. This, in turn, results in higher prices for groceries that rely on these imported goods and for gas, which is heavily tied to the global oil market. 5. Inflationary pressures on the cost of goods. Interest rate hikes are often used by the Federal Reserve to combat inflation, but the short-term effect can actually be an increase in prices. When interest rates go up, borrowing costs rise for businesses, which may pass these higher costs on to consumers. As a result, grocery prices may rise due to the increased costs of production, packaging, and distribution, while gas prices may also rise as fuel and refining costs increase. 6. Higher costs for agricultural financing. Farmers rely on loans to finance the planting, harvesting, and transportation of crops. When interest rates increase, the cost of financing these operations rises. This can lead to higher costs for agricultural products, such as grains, fruits, and vegetables. When the cost of producing and transporting these goods goes up, consumers may feel the impact through higher grocery prices, making everyday foods like bread, milk, and eggs more expensive. 7. Strain on disposable income. Higher interest rates also mean that consumers may be paying more for credit cards, auto loans, and mortgages. As a result, many people may have less disposable income to spend on everyday goods like groceries and gas. With less money available to spend, the demand for some products may decrease, leading to higher prices as retailers and suppliers attempt to compensate for the loss of purchasing power. 8. Impact on gasoline refining and storage costs. Gasoline refining is a capital-intensive business, and interest rates can affect the cost of financing refining operations and storage. When interest rates increase, refineries may pass these higher financing costs on to consumers in the form of higher prices at the pump. Additionally, storage costs for fuel may increase, adding to the overall cost of gasoline, which is reflected in higher gas prices for everyday drivers. 9. Effect on consumer confidence. Interest rate hikes can negatively impact consumer confidence, as higher borrowing costs may create concerns about the economy's future. When consumers are less confident about the economy, they tend to pull back on spending, which can impact grocery sales and demand for fuel. This reduction in demand can lead to price fluctuations as retailers and gas stations try to balance supply and demand. 10. Delayed effects on long-term consumer behavior. While the immediate impact of interest rate hikes on groceries and gas may be evident, the long-term effects can influence consumer behavior for months or even years. For example, if higher interest rates make it harder for people to buy homes, they may delay purchases of big-ticket items or cut back on discretionary spending, such as dining out or purchasing non-essential grocery items. Over time, these changes in spending habits can further contribute to shifts in grocery and gas prices. The U.S. Federal Reserve's interest rate hikes may seem like a distant economic factor, but they have a significant impact on everyday expenses, including the cost of groceries and gas. From increased supply chain costs to higher borrowing costs for businesses, the effects of interest rate hikes trickle down to consumers in the form of higher prices at the grocery store and the gas pump. By understanding how these changes work, you can better prepare for potential price increases and manage your personal finances accordingly. While interest rate hikes are intended to control inflation, their short-term effects on everyday expenses highlight the importance of staying informed about broader economic trends.